stay open and curious, make space for all voices, and take what serves you. So those are norms that the conference committee put together for the whole conference. As you just heard, the session is being recorded, as most are, so you can revisit the recordings. They'll be posted on the Colorado Coaching Consortium website after the conference ends. So to get us started, we want to know who's here today. And so we're going to start with a poll, and there's 3 questions. We wanted to know, are you a person wearing multiple hats? Are you receiving coaching from a coach who's balancing those multiple roles? Or are you considering adding a role where you may then be balancing different roles? So Cameron has launched the poll, and if you can please respond, we'll see who's here today. See the results coming in. Let's see, we have almost everybody has answered. Okay, I think we can end the poll. And Cameron, are you sharing the results or?
Yep.
Okay. So we can see that many of you, 88%, are wearing multiple hats in your role. And wow, not as many receiving, because I imagine most of you are coaches who are here. And then considering the role that you'd be balancing those multiple roles, not as many. Okay, well, even if you are not balancing multiple roles, these topics that will be discussed will apply to all coaching relationships. So hopefully it'll have some nice takeaways. So with that, Phyllis is going to introduce or get our panel started.
Thanks, Lorraine. And thank you everyone for joining us. So the format of this session is driven by a panel of 3. And again, Lorraine and I want to, in the Coaching Consortium, we want to thank our 3 panelists for stepping up and being so willing and generous to share their stories and their insight. And as we're going to let them, as part of their story, introduce themselves, because their name and their role is part of their story. We have Rebecca, Samantha, and Sue, and they will introduce themselves. And we'd like to start out, please, and if we could do it in this order. There was a bit of confusion when we all met, but let's have Rebecca and then Samantha and then Sue speak to these questions. So Rebecca, Samantha, and Sue, for your consideration, can you share a time when you had to balance multiple roles? For example, being both a coach and a supervisor, a coach and a peer. And how did you ensure transparency as you had those multiple roles, and ethical integrity? Let me repeat the question for everyone. Can you share a time when you had to balance multiple roles? How did you ensure transparency and ethical integrity? So could we start with Rebecca? Rebecca, introduce yourself, your role, and then respond to our prompts. Thank you.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Rebecca Nieto, Adams County Head Start. I am a lot of hats. I'm the teacher. I'm the peer coach. I am a new employee mentor. I am the on-site center director. And I just took on the new piece of the parent engagement parenting program that we will start facilitating in January. There are quite a few pieces to my coaching that I do. I'm coaching in incredible years. I'm coaching in teacher classroom management and the social emotional curriculum that we have within our community. couple of things that I have found that have been very helpful to me when I am picking my hats out and I'm switching from teacher role to perhaps mentoring role to into my coaching role or back the same direction is I have found that a 1 to 2 minute grounding meditation between those two pieces. So if I'm in my classroom and I have scheduled to go coach one of my other peer coach teachers, and that's going to come in at 1:30. I will take 5 minutes to gather all of my documents, listen to a grounding meditation, and kind of shift my brain from teacher role to coach role. That has really helped me be able to differentiate between the two. Keeping the confidentiality and the integrity of those relationships is really challenging sometimes when you are mentoring your assistant teacher. So keeping those confidentiality pieces come really handy when we have a coaching contract. It defines what we can and cannot do. We put norms in that work for each individual. So if I was coaching number one and I was coaching number two, their norms are not going to be the same. Their approach is not going to be the same. So learning them and honoring how they want to be communicated with, but also setting that base in the very beginning that what we talk about here is between you and I. This information will not go any farther. I'm not your supervisor in this situation. I am strictly your coach. So that has helped with that piece as well to be able to keep that integrity to the trust building of that relationship that is very important as we move forward. So those two things have helped me with that. And also just a kind of a check-in, really not planned. Just like, hey, how you doing today? Anything you need? How are things looking? How is this little one going? How did things go when you implemented that? Just a quick little bye check-in just to let them know that yes, I am here. Yes, I am thinking about you. And what you said to me is still placed value upon, and I will continue to support that. So those are the things that have helped me. Thank you.
I forgot
Hi,
to unmute.
everybody.
Thank you,
Oh,
Samantha.
hi, everyone. I am Sammy or Samantha White. Um, I work at Beautiful Savior. It's a private Lutheran school in Broomfield, Colorado, um, which is where I hold many of my hats. We have infants all the way through eighth graders. So I currently teach full time kindergarten and first grade. But on top of that, I serve as the Early Learning Center's assistant director and internal coach. Um, with all of these things I do here, I'm also a field instructor through Red Rocks Community College, where I'm a part of their early childhood mentorship program. So I essentially invite students into our center where they can practice some of the things that they've worked on, and I can really just mentor them throughout the beginning parts of their journey. So really like what I do is it's my daily job to teach and support, coach and mentor my staff here at Beautiful Savior. So that's the majority of what I do. And while doing so, making sure that I keep everything very professional and ensuring that I don't show biases when I'm switching from hats to hats. When I'm going from being assistant director to actually going into the classroom and coaching or mentoring some of the teachers. Um, I really attempt to ensure transparency and ethical integrity in my work by making sure that I clarify the roles that I'm working on. So when I'm going into a classroom being like, hey, I'm not the assistant director right now, I am a coach. What are we working on? Like, what do we want to do today? Um, and really just maintaining open, honest, respectful communication with them. I think that is probably what I strive to do the most within all of that.
And if I may, both Sammy and Rebecca, Sammy, in your role, you do have authority, just for clarification, you have some authority on uh, what happens in your program. Am I correct?
Yes, you're correct.
And Rebecca, what about you?
No, I do not carry a supervisor authority within my program.
And yet I'm going to guess there's accountability that you do carry.
You would be correct.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And our third panelist is Sue.
Hi, I'm Sue Kansteiner, and I work at Early Learning Ventures with the Early Head Start program. And I've been there for about 6 years. So we contract with childcare centers and homes throughout 6 different counties in Colorado. And I work in Arapahoe County. I have multiple hats, multiple roles that I play. I work with leadership in the child care centers, so I help them to make sure that they are being accountable to the rules and regs of Early Head Start. And then I coach the teachers and the leadership on their goals and working with them on like class observations, on just other goals that they have to improve their teaching. And then I also work with families. So we interview families into our program, and then I follow up with families and help them with resources and whatever they need as they go forward in our program, helping them get supplies like diapers, wipes, and other supplies for their children. So I'm working basically 3 different roles in my job. So I consistently need to balance these roles. When I coach teachers, I have my coach hat on and I listen, I focus on my coach partner, but at the same time, all my other roles are still present in my mind and present in what I do. So it's really just really, I take a lot of time and meditate or focus so that I can be present with them. And I also communicate with families. When I work with them, I have the knowledge and the strengths and help them with struggles and concerns. Some of my teachers are also parents in our program. So sometimes I call them and I say, I'm calling you as a parent today, and I put that role on and speak to them as a parent rather than their coach as a teacher. So it's really being very clear and setting those parts separate. It's important. I feel that all these roles are important, that they are all aligned together. We all have the same purpose, working to support children. So as I work with my coach partner, I listen, I focus on their goals, being aware of all these other parts. I share what is pertinent with these coach partners. And as I think Rebecca shared, it's confidentiality is really important because I may know something about a family that the coach partner doesn't know or the leadership doesn't know, but it's something that's important that I keep confidential or vice versa. So that confidentiality really plays a key part there. Um, so basically, for me, it's just really taking that time to focus, be present with each um, part that I'm playing and make sure I'm present there. So, thank you.
Thank you, Sue and Sammy and Rebecca. Lorene, did you want to
Yes.
take it from here?
Sure. So thank you all for telling us a little bit about what you do. And so we have our next question. I'm going to ask the group first to answer in chat, or you can call out. I'm going to ask the question, what are the biggest challenges you've faced when wearing multiple hats and coaching? And so we'd like to hear from all of you in attendance what those challenges may be or have been, and then we'll also open it up to our panelists to respond to that question. So feel free to call out, raise your hand, put answers in chat. Oh, time and balance, says JJ.
I think there's a sort of confusion when you wear so many hats because I've been there, done that, and I need to define every time that I'm walking in the classroom. Hey, Emil is here. I'm just a coach. Hey, Emil is here. I'm just a curriculum director. So it's almost like repetitive, but it is needed so that they don't feel, is Emil coming here to assess me as the director, or is she my coach that I can lean on for whatever that I need?
Okay. Yeah. So there can be confusion, as you said, as you come in the room. So it's almost as if you have to announce, right? How you're presenting in that moment, right? Which role. Yeah. So lots of responses in chat too. We have enough quality time with someone or with the group. Well, they're coming in too fast. I can't keep up. The time each role deserves, right? Again, there that time issue. What role you are in that moment, really being clear. And as our panelists already shared with us, right, that they intentionally have a way to do that, whether it's sort of a little transition ritual or just some preparation they do for that transition into that different role. Not crossing the role and define the role, understand the role and responsibilities, be clear on what role I am in that situation, staying focused, pace and focus, flexibility. Flexibility makes me wonder if you ever have to, in the moment, switch roles, but maybe that will come up in our conversation, right? Um, so it sounds like being really clear about what the role is what we're hearing from all of you. So I'd like to open it up to the panelists to answer this, like to share some of your biggest challenges you've had in balancing these multiple roles or wearing these multiple hats.
One of the biggest challenges I had was when I was coaching another teacher whose assistant teacher had been my assistant teacher. So, unfortunately, that relationship, the assistant teacher and myself, that relationship was not smooth. So, coaching the other teacher and staying within the confines and the bounds of only coaching that other teacher and not allowing, as Sammy had said, bringing in any of my biases or my pre-knowledge of a situation. That was a challenge I had. What I started learning to do was when someone came to me and they asked me, hey, can we talk for a minute? I would clarify, what role are we talking in? Am I your friend? Am I your coach? Am I your mentor? Am I just another teacher in the building? And that really helped set that boundary into place of what I was going to hear and how I was going to respond.
Rebecca, did they ever say, I want you to be all of them in this moment?
Multiple times, and the can I just hold your hand and cry on your shoulder for a few minutes? I'm so frustrated. So if that came out, I would be like, okay, this is more of the friend role, and I'm just going to let you do what you need to do in order to get balanced, because then we can have the conversation, and then I can respond, say, okay, well, I hear what you're saying as your coach or as your mentor or as your friend. Here's what I'm seeing or hearing.
Right. So it reminds me, for those that were in the morning session, the Simon Sinek video, he talked about emptying the bucket, letting them empty, right? So you would listen and you listen till they have said everything they need to say, and then you can determine which role to take, it sounds like. Is that, yeah, great. Thanks.
I think my biggest struggle in my experience with holding different hats is being that my school goes infants through eighth grade. I'm actually a product of the school that I go to.
Uh,
So now I'm an assistant director and a coach and all of this for teachers who have watched me grow up. But with this, I think the best thing that helped me was just true open communication. Um, just, going in and having conversations with these people that I have learned from, and just having the conversation, hey, like, what do you want this to look like? And kind of like Rebecca was saying, like, what do you want me to be right now? And just having those conversations and actively listening to their responses and really getting into their responses.
Mhm, mhm. Sammy, that makes me think, often we hear that age difference can be a challenge, especially if you as the coach are younger than the folks you're coaching. So have you experienced that with, as you said, the people that watched you grow up and now you're
Um,
coaching them?
you know what? In the past, I have dealt with that. But right now, my staff is amazing. So I truly, right now I'm very grateful and thankful that I don't have to deal with that right now.
Okay, nice. Okay, Sue, did you want to add?
Yeah, for me, it's really important for me to keep confidentiality. And at the same time, that is can be a challenge for me, especially when I'm speaking to a coach partner who I have other knowledge, like I can see the whole picture, but they cannot. And I have other knowledge that might be beneficial to them about the families or something like that, but I am not able to share that unless I got permission to do that. So sometimes that's really hard for me to know more that might be helpful, yet I cannot share at the time. So um, if I really think it is can be helpful, I will speak to that family and then maybe go back and talk to them at another time. But really being aware what those where I have those what do you call it? The um, just to know that I am there for a certain reason and not there um, and cannot share everything that I may know. Um, so that can be a challenge sometimes.
Yeah, sounds like it, Sue. Thanks for sharing that because I think that does come up, right? Even when not wearing so many multiple hats, right? That can still come up. Um, and I can appreciate that you, if you feel it's needed, can go to the other party, the other person, and say, could I have permission to share this? Um, that relates to the braving with Brene Brown this morning about the vault, right? Not sharing information that's not ours to share is so critical, right? But so often in our intent to be helpful, we sometimes want to do that, right? That urge comes up to be wanting to share that information, as Sue said, because she can see the whole picture from those varied perspectives. So that can be really challenging. Anyone in our group outside of our panel want to share anything at this time about that? Your most challenging, or maybe you have an example of an experience? I guess not. So we'll move on to our next question for the panelists. Feel free if you have a comment or question as we go to ask. And if you have an example to share, we'd love to hear from others as well.
And Lorraine, I wonder if I might just add something to this conversation that we are having. It's more complex than it is complicated. And yet, I would like to add that a consideration is culture. So we talked about age differences. I think we need to also acknowledge that cultural differences play into this also. We may think we're being transparent. We may think we're fully identifying and ensuring that we are showing the hat. If the coach is in a program where that transparency is not part of the overall program culture, it could be difficult, and that could be a challenge. Program culture, and now we're talking about just culture, your own culture, your coaching partner's culture, the other staff culture. And sometimes that can also present some challenges. And I've heard it from Rebecca and Sammy and Sue that we heard it this morning, the not just listening, but the art of listening is really key in this. I just wanted to mention that because sometimes, not that we overlook it, but sometimes I wonder if we don't give it enough value. That culture is a really important piece for this, especially for those of you who are working in very diverse settings.
Right. Rebecca.
We'd go on the comment that Sammy had made from a personal experience. I have an assistant teacher, have had an assistant teacher who was considerably younger than me. Bordering, I could be her grandma even. And it's been that cultural piece that Phyllis was just talking about. She's young, she's married, and when the conversations come up, like, well, my mother-in-law, I'm like, wait a second. Wait, my brain has to flip that switch. I'm like, how can you have a mother-in-law? You're so young. So I understand what Sammy was saying and how she was feeling just on the other side. She's the younger one coaching to the people who watched her grow up. So having that conversation with the assistant in the past of telling her point blank where I'm coming from and that I understand that there's a difference in our age bracket, that I have asked her that if something comes out that's not landing well with her, to ask for clarification on that. That is supporting, I feel that's supporting not just her individuality, but also the culture that she comes from, her little cosm that she lives in. I want to make sure that I'm very respectful of that. So having that conversation right up front, just telling her, if I say something that doesn't sound right to you, please call me out on it. Let's chat about it. And that has worked out really well with being able to have those honest and open conversations, without the fear of either one of us feeling like we don't have to tap dance around each other with it.
It's making me think cultural humility, that you're willing to upfront say, I want to learn about you. I may make some mistakes here, so please correct me, right? I want to learn. Um, that's so nice to be able and to do it up front, right? Because already as we come in as coaches, sometimes there is a perceived power dynamic, even if we're not projecting that. So to be aware of that and then in establishing that relationship and that foundation, hopefully that gets dispelled. But there's definitely can be a power dynamic, and that can be dependent on the person's experience, right? Past experiences. Yeah, thanks for that. So anyone else have any examples of a challenge you had?
I just wanted to share, are we talking about building trust or challenges?
Either one.
Okay.
They're related.
I wanted to talk about building trust. Somebody mentioned listening. It's so important to listen and really listen to my coach partners or whoever I'm working with. And the other thing that I'm really, you're talking about cultures. I work in two centers that have many, many different cultures. Most of them are from different African countries, speak many different languages. And as I know a lot of them, I've been working with them for several years. But when I have a new teacher, it's really finding that fine line of asking them, making sure that they can understand me without offending them, because they take pride in I know English, and they don't want me to say, oh, you don't understand English. So try to find a way to, it's like, I'm going to make sure you're understanding what I'm saying. Is there anything I can do to support that? And so I'm finding there's just that balance in talking with them and making sure that they understand. And I think that builds trust there because they know that I understand them and I listen to where they're coming from. Also, I think a big part of building trust is becoming vulnerable at times. And again, it's a fine line of how vulnerable am I and what do I share. but sometimes sharing my experience on something or just how I experience something that they're going through just gives them a little, I think, comfortability with me. And so I think that is important as well. So um, all of that, I think, really helps build trust over time.
So I want to thank all of you. We're going to move on, and this is sort of a piggyback question. It's worked really, I can't believe how well this is working. It's as if we have scripted the whole thing, maybe. Um, but let me just share it in chat. And we want this to be brought to the participants first, and then we'll loop our panelists into these questions. And several of you have talked about some practical ways that you are building and sustaining trust when managing multiple roles and the complexities of those ways and those strategies. The second part of this is, can trust be maintained when there is a potential conflict of interest? And what does that actually look like? Can it be maintained? And if the answer is yes, or perhaps it's no, or perhaps it's murky, I hope it's yes, but it might not be. What does it actually look like in practice? If I were to be the fly on the wall watching it, what does it actually look like? So I'd love to hear from, and would love to hear from our participants, and then we'll loop it back to the panelists for their thoughts. You can raise your hand. You can put something in chat.
I think I can go first, if I may. Some practical ways that I come to build and sustain trust is having that open communication. Like I always tell the staff that we can always revisit what we've talked about, because what we've talked about in the moment can shift and look different later on when that person reflect on it more. So just having that, just letting them know that it's okay to revisit a conversation that was previously had, and that's okay because not all of us have the reflective capacity in the moment. Now, can can trust be maintained if there's potential conflict of interest? Yes. I believe that as a leader, you have to have boundaries when it comes to your staff, because I've noticed that a lot of directors want to be friends with staff. And when it comes to conflict of interest, that plays a big know where you could not do it because you're too friendly with that staff. I believe that boundaries helps with that. If there's a conflict of interest that needs to be addressed, I will address it in a loving kind of way so that we no longer can have that problem. Now, this practice can be hard because not all of us are good at conflict and resolution, but I find it that when you become a leader, all of that has to fall upon your lap, and you have to do it in a way that both parties understand, and that, again, if conversation needs to be had about it, it can be revisited. Hopefully that answer your questions.
Thank you, Alicia. You brought up a number of things, and we do have Sammy, who is in a role of leadership, in addition to her many other hats. So when we open it up to the panelists, Sammy, I'm going to look to you because there are some definite challenges and complexities there. Who else would like to respond to our questions? Share with all of us your your multiple roles, and the potential conflict of interest that you might have seen or are currently experiencing.
Phyllis, I can jump in a little bit right now. I just keep finding myself going back to our acronym from this morning on braving connections. I have my notes here and I keep looking, and all of these come into play for me in managing potential conflicts of interest, and especially the vault in my role with different employees, the people that I coach, the leadership team that I'm involved in. It's and why I keep coming back to vault is because it's not just because it's Tuesday, it's not just right now, it's real all the time. Brene Brown, absolutely. And it's a matter of integrity. And it definitely can be done. Trust can be maintained. It's a serious
Josie,
fact.
I wonder if you could, for those of us who were not in the first session, if you could talk about braving, maybe it's an acronym, and talk about the vault and what that is and how Brene Brown defines that.
Sure. In the first session, I believe it was Janet shared a video from Brene Brown, and she was talking about trust, and she came up with an acronym, which was braving connections. And braving, BRAVING, stands for boundaries, reliability, accountability, vault, integrity, non-judgment, and generosity. That's braving. So to be brave in these connections builds trust.
Thank you, Josie. I see some wonderful chat. Stephanie, be transparent about my role or roles and clarifying boundaries. There are boundaries, and be sure to honor confidentiality. And my thing just went. I may give a gentle reminder of my role. I like the word gentle. That's lovely. And it is so much easier, right, if you have a strong relationship. And yet, it may enter when you're building that relationship. And Kelly writes, sounds so simple and overgeneralized, but coming in with a smile. A smile feels less threatening when approaching someone. Maintaining trust may actually grow if the potential conflict could be carefully negotiated. Conflict resolution and repair is always a thought process. And I might add to that, thank you, Kelly, that in order for there to be true conflict resolution, there has to be collaboration within that. And as odd as it may seem, successful conflict resolution builds trust, collaboration, partnership, all of that. And it does help define boundaries. And it certainly goes to accountability. So thank you so much for that, Kelly. And thank you, Janet, for putting in what each of those letters stand for. Yes, resiliency as well. I don't think we can overuse that word, resilience. I know it's a word we use a lot, but I think we can keep using it as much as we want and need to. Anyone else?
I'd like to just comment on Kelly's comment about the smile, because think about in our busyness sometimes, how do we show up? How do we enter that space? Is it in our rushed and you just frantic look, or is it with that smile and that pause and taking in as you enter what you're entering into, right? So it does sound simple, Kelly, as you said, but so important to recognize how we show up, right? Because let's face it, everyone's busy and you got three things going at once. And sometimes if that's showing as we enter this interaction with our coaching partner, it's probably setting a stage we don't want to set for that session. So thanks for sharing that, right? Sometimes it is those simple things that can make a big difference.
Do we have any of our other participants that might want to respond to our questions or something that you're thinking of right now as you listen to this wonderful dialogue conversation.
I think one thing that I would like to share, it's in regarding the culture piece that I love that you brought, Phyllis. Um, myself as I am a trilingual speaker, it's very hard for me to coach where I have to translate everything in my brain. And then when my teachers hear me, they're like, huh? And then I have to build that relationship, that rapport with them and let them know if there's something you don't understand, I would love to rephrase it and make it simple for you. And I think this is where also there's something that comes in my brain that's called instead of culture humility, I feel like I want to call it culture educating, because if you don't educate your teachers, they won't know who you are. And most people would think when I'm speaking, they're like, oh, she's just, she doesn't know what she's saying. But they don't know that it's a lot for me to decode three different languages in my brain and then speak it. It's the hardest part, right? So this is where, as a coach, I I take the loving part of that to educate my staff that, hey, I have three different languages in my brain, whether it is like simple or not, it is quite hard to put it into language for you in the perfect English for you to understand. And they take pleasure also to asking me, Emil, this child came to my care and she's from or he's from another culture. What is your thought on that? And I think because I educate and then they understand me, it makes our relationship works because I'm coming from a background that is different from theirs.
Thank you for sharing and the honesty and transparency that you bring to the practice of, as you use the term, educating. And if we could flip it, so imagine if we're talking about our coaching partner in this part of the conversation, who is also navigating a number of cultures, a couple of different languages, and and you're asking her or him to fully understand, accept, acknowledge the hat that you're wearing. So again, looking for those strategies to ensure that there is that honesty and transparency. So thank you very much for sharing that. I wonder, can we move to our panelists and ask them to comment, share, respond to our questions? What are some practical ways to build and sustain trust? I think several of you have already, a couple of you, maybe all of you have talked about that when managing multiple roles. Can trust be maintained when there's a potential conflict of interest? And what might that look like in practice? So, do you have a concrete example, or have you anticipated something so that you have prepared yourself? So we have Sammy and Sue and Rebecca, and I don't know, either one of you. I did sort of talk to Sammy first. I don't know, Sammy, if you have some thoughts on these questions.
Yeah, I mean, so for me, I think it kind of goes back to the communication and really having these conversations with the staff of, which hat I'm wearing. But with that, again, being the assistant director and, making some of those kind of decisions, um, and having to have some of those conversations while being a coach here, I just really keeping, the things we talk about as a coach, keeping it there and, like not sharing it and letting it go any further than that and keeping all of that confidential with my staff has really helped um build trust. And like I said, having the open communication with some of the other staff members of what do we want to do today? Like, how do you want this to go? How do you see this going? Really keeps that trust. So just really fostering a culture of like collaborating with them, so that they have a part in decision making and choice making, and um, just giving them a voice too. So, hearing them as much as they hear me.
Thank you, Sammy. Sue or Rebecca? Do either of you have any thoughts on a response?
I think I kind of spoke a little out of turn before when I was speaking about trust, but um, yeah, I just really like what everybody is saying. And I love that smile that made me really stop and think of how I show up every day when I walk into um, that center or that home. It's like, how do I show up? And I might be having a really bad day, or I might have just left another center or another situation where that's where my mind is. But I need to really show up present there. And one of the things that I do is take some reflection time in my car before I walk in to really center myself and reflect on so that I can be present there. So I can walk in with that smile and know that I'm there present. So I really loved that. So I just wanted to comment on that.
Thank you, Sue.
Something Kelly said about the smile, you think it's just a simple thing. Like she said, it's just so simple. But when you greet your staff, or you greet your family, or just greet random people on the street, just that smile kind of builds that good feeling. Also something that Sammy was saying is that what they work really hard on is to lay that foundation of trust. Once they know that you can say what you want to say to me, and I'm not going to share this out with anybody else, that opens up it deepens that intimacy between the two of you, where that conversation becomes a little bit richer and a little bit more authentic to what their need is, because now they know, hey, I told you some pretty personal, powerful things on how I was feeling. You didn't tell anybody. You didn't treat me any different. You showed up every day looking at me the same as you did before. Okay, I can move forward with you with this because now I feel it. You showed it to me, but now I feel it. And it's really an ingrained response into me that I am able to reflect back to you because you have shown me, you have gained, if you will, my trust. It's not just something we give lightly to people. We have to work with them for them to understand that, yes, we are here for you. And unless it's something horribly egregious and against the law, we will never be breaking this confidentiality piece. Our contract doesn't allow us to.
Thank you. Thank you, Rebecca and Sue and Sammy. I had, if I may, I had shared something with Lorene when she and I were planning and talking about this session. And I had the honor some years ago to develop a training with Lynn Andrews. Some of you may know Lynn Andrews. And we actually worked with coaches in the state of Georgia. They were all early Head Start coaches. In our first cohort, we did have directors of early Head Start programs. In addition to coaches. And these were directors who were either currently coaching their staff or considering coaching their staff. And it added some depth and complication to a lot of our conversations when we would have directors and coaches. You cannot escape that you are the authority in a program when you're the director. And there were very honest conversations about, yes, you're being transparent, but how are you really being seen by your staff? Do your staff actually believe that you're walking in as a coach? even when you tell them you're walking in as a coach. We had one director who at the end of our sessions, and we would, with each cohort, we were down in Georgia several times. So it wasn't like a one-off thing. It was quite intense. We had one director at the very end of our session as we were sharing and talking about sort of the entirety of the training, who said, very honest and brave to say, I cannot coach. I cannot wear those two hats. I will always have my director's hat on, even if I put my coaching hat on top of it. And she had already, as she was going through our training, she made the decision that she was going to look for ways of bringing in a coach, hiring a coach, finding money for a coach, and had the knowledge that she simply could not do it. And so I bring this example because we always have to be cognizant of not only what we are saying that we're wearing, but how is it that we're really being perceived. And I think many of you have talked about checking in, and I love you. Let me check in with you. I think if we do that enough, at some point somebody might be honest if this is the case and say, you walk in here, but let me just tell you, I always see you as the lead teacher, or I always see you as the director or the assistant director. And then a real conversation could happen around that potential conflict of interest.
Thanks for sharing that, Phyllis. That is important for that person to recognize, right? That they couldn't do both. I would like to think that she gained some coaching skills that can apply to all relationships. And so maybe she was a more effective director now, having some knowledge and some practice with some of the coaching skills, right?
Yeah, and thank you, Lorraine. And in fact, both Len and I heard from her somewhat later. And what she did say to us, along with what you said, what she did email us to say, is that because she had taken that, she was able to have really authentic conversations with the coach who came into her program, and she felt more receptive to being coached. So yes, it did help.
Great. Well, we have another question, and keeping with our little pattern here, we're going to ask you all first. How do you communicate boundaries to coaching partners when you have dual roles? We've talked a little bit about maintaining professional boundaries. So this one probably can apply to even if you're not having multiple roles, right? Someone earlier mentioned about wanting to be friends, and right, that can get pretty sticky sometimes, but how can we maintain some professional boundaries and still be effective in coaching? So we'd like to hear again from our participants first, and then we'll open it to the panelists. Maybe you're here to hear ideas from others, right? So
I think I can go first. When I was hired at Primrose, it was hard for me to define my shoes that I wore, because I was curriculum director, trainer, and coach. And it was very hard, but it took about 3 years to finally sit in a comfortableness where I had to talk to my co-director and let her know that these are the coaching training agreement that I would love for you to put on the packet when you are onboarding staff on. So they know that Emil is not just a curriculum director, she's also a trainer at the school, and she's also a coach at the school. And two of those jobs can interact with each other, but at the same time, it is different. So I had her putting a coaching agreement and a trainer agreement in the pocket when they're filling it out so that they understand this is her jobs. There are times she will walk in and say, hey, something is missing, and it's based on licensing rules and regulations because she's also a director. And there are times she'll be like, okay, I'm going to come in and do some observation. It's because she's a coach. And here, I'm here today. What do you want to learn from me as a trainer so that they understand my responsibilities? And there's also their boundaries as well.
Right. So, and that aligns with somebody Becky put in chat, being upfront and honest from the beginning. So having those expectations kind of laid out can be helpful, right? As you say, and then adding to individual norms or agreements as you get to know each other better onto those agreements. Right. Thank you. What else? I see some are here to find out how others keep those professional boundaries using clear coaching agreements about each other's roles and responsibilities again, right? Um, Try to do PD with staff about my role and how I allocate my time for each aspect of my role. I also use my coaching agreement, co-create norms, and make sure I'm speaking to which role I am fulfilling during the meetings. Yeah.
I wonder, Lorene, Ashley, can we put you on the spot a bit? Can you talk a little bit more about what that might look like, your PD with staff about your roles? What does that look like?
Yeah, of course. So what I do is typically we have a teacher work week each year. And so I do a half an hour to 45-minute kind of presentation on my role, the different aspects, what people can expect from me. I ask them what they need as teachers. I always follow up with a survey. So, I mean, I really try to lay it out there from the very beginning of the year exactly what they can expect of me. And then I know that people are different types of learners, so I always follow up with, some sort of email, or I'll actually send out my presentation afterwards so that people have a chance to digest that information in the way that feels appropriate for them.
Thank you, Ashley. It's a really good strategy.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing and letting me put you on the spot a bit.
No problem.
So what else? It's making me think, what do we really mean by boundaries here? What do we mean by that? We say that a lot, sort of like we say listening a lot, right? What is a boundary? What are we putting up a wall between, right? As we think of a boundary as separating something. Any thoughts on that? Hmm.
It is interesting, isn't it, Lorraine? Because we are using that word. Yeah, I wonder what others are experiencing, and in that sort of very practice of boundary setting. In your examples, what might they look like?
I think for me, when I say boundaries, I mean to say that when I come in as a coach, I'm going to do my job as a coach. I'm not there as a curriculum director, if that makes sense. And vice versa, if I am a trainer, that I am in that hat, there are certain perimeters that I can go that I cannot go, if that makes sense. And this is where I have to educate them what that looks like. Because when my staff sees me, they're like, oh, are you in here to just assess the classroom again, to make sure that we're following licensing rules? And I'm like, that's not me today. But I'm here to see what you're in needs of in the classroom in terms of if there's resources that you might need based on cultural diversity or challenging behavior. Or there are times that I will walk in and I'm like, hey guys, what do you feel like you want the training for next week look like? So those type of boundaries so that they know the parameters that I stay within each role.
Okay, thanks. Let's hear from the panelists, and then we can open it up to everyone else after they share some of their ideas about boundaries. And Stephanie just put in chat, decide what you will and won't do as a coach. Yeah, that says boundary to me.
One of the things that Alicia triggered when I was listening to her speak was they see me with so many different hats. While I don't carry supervisor capacity, I do carry the director on site capacity. So when I come into the room, it is multiple questions in multiple different areas and having to clarify, okay, so can we sit down and talk about that later? Because right now I'm here to do the observation on the goal you made when we were coaching. And so that helps with that piece and validating. I heard what you said. I know you need some answers regarding what is missing on your licensing board. But today, right now, what my purpose for being in here for the next hour is to focus solely on the observation and the communication of the goal that you had set in our meeting last time. And then I can say, do you want to circle back at the end of that? So, okay, we have finished this. Do you have time after the kiddos leave today, or do you want to make a formal plan to have that conversation? So that has really helped me be able to balance those two different hats, is to say, I hear what you're saying. I know that you need support from me in this area. Let's shelf that until we finish what the purpose of today's visit was, and then we can go back to that and set some time for that.
That's really clear, Rebecca, right? That, and you still acknowledged what they needed to share with you and didn't disregard. You revisited it at the end to let's circle back, make a time for that now or in the future to address that. That's nice, right? Because you get sidetracked. Go in with, you have planned this time this way, and then woo, they take you over here, right? If you don't keep that in place. Nice example. Yeah. Sammy or Sue?
I don't have a lot to share in addition, but when Stephanie said decide what you will and what you do as a coach, it made me stop and think about I'm not there to fix problems and I'm not there to to solve the issue. I'm here to listen and help support. And I think sometimes I have coach partners that want that. They want me just fix it, make it go away, make it better. And sometimes it's setting that boundary, being really clear. I'm here to support you. I'm here to work with you and work alongside you and not do it for you. And sometimes that's hard because, and I don't know if it's a cultural thing, but I do work with some teachers that really kind of expect that. They expect me to take it over and do it for them. I was helping some of them apply for college classes, and they're like handing me their computer. It's like, oh, you just do it for me. And I said, I'd be happy to support you and help you. And then I help them do it. But sometimes it's just maybe it's overwhelming or whatever. And so that's what that brought up for me is like, I'm here to work alongside you and support you. And that's setting a boundary of saying, this is why I'm here. I'm not here to do it for you. That's what it brought up for me.
Yeah, and boundaries can show up in many ways, as we're hearing, right? And big ways and little ways. Oh, Stephanie, yeah. So it sounds like Stephanie preps herself before she goes in, reminds herself, right, what she can, what she will and won't do as a coach. Yeah.
Mm, mm, mm.
So that relates to what many of you have shared about setting those expectations up in advance, those agreements, right, in a contract or some norms that you'll both adhere to during your coaching relationship, your time together, right? And those can be revisited. Right? Has it ever happened where a boundary has been crossed by either one, you or your coaching partner, and then kind of had to reestablish those boundaries or perhaps set new ones?
Yes, that has happened to me. And we, the one of the people I was coaching, we had developed a personal relationship outside of our professional relationship. And I saw the path was really getting blurred. When we would sit down, there was conversation around, well, how is this person in your, how is your family? How is your life? And having more intimate details on, well, how is your daughter when she went through da 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 da, or, those pieces I saw this happening. Had to do some self-reflection on that and some self-realization and say, okay, to myself, I need to reestablish those boundaries, but then having that communication can be a little tricky. But you have to find the way to have that conversation gently and in the spirit of what your intention is that you want to say. So having that conversation of like, we have a great relationship in the building and we have a great relationship outside of the building. While we're in here in our coaching sessions, would you agree that it would benefit both of us to just remain within the coaching guidelines? And then if we want to have a conversation around our personal relationship or the things that we are experiencing, we can do that either outside of work, we can do it, this evening, we can meet for coffee or whatever and that small little conversation helped shift that boundary back into place. So that was really helpful to have.
That's nice. That's a nice example. So that happens a lot, right? Again, and maybe not with everyone wearing multiple hats, but I heard that within other coaching relationships, right? Like, become friends because you've spent a lot of time together. However, right, to be clear what this time together is for.
And I also reminded years ago, years ago, I worked a coach on the Eastern Plain, where she had to travel 50 miles to every site. She put a huge number of miles on her car, weekly and monthly. And I remember her relating. She was working with a particular center, very small on the East Plains, and she was asked to come in to support the director and the teachers, and the director was sometimes the teacher in the classroom. The directors and the teachers in boundaries. They all knew each other. Tiny, tiny town. They were friends. They were not friends. They went to the same church. They didn't go to the same church, and the director reached out to her, to this coach, recognizing, and she reached out with her teachers, knowing that she was reaching out. They were all for this, recognizing that they were having in their program. It was becoming somewhat dysfunctional for them, and they knew that at some point it would affect the children and the families, who also, the families, so teachers to the same church, didn't go to the same church, were friends, were not friends. And so that boundary, as Rebecca was talking about, that sort of the agreement, and that's what the coach worked with them on, is agreements around and establishing those agreements around who are we when we open the door and walk in as director and teachers. Who are we? When we leave, we're in our personal lives, but while we're here, we're in our roles as teacher, director. So yeah, again, in very small communities, that can certainly come up around boundaries for teachers, for the entire staff.
What that makes me think of is social media, because sometimes I wonder, I have a hard time with that sometimes, should I be friends? How much should I put myself out there on social media? Who should I be friends with? Who should I not be friends with? I don't know if anybody else goes through that and how you, I guess it's more of a question for the group of how do you deal with that?
And is there a generational and cultural differences to how one might respond to that?
Yeah, I really think it has a lot to do with boundaries. You know, how are people using you when they invite you, right? Just to enhance things. So, and then what could happen? I mean, I nearly lost a job because a distant connection came connected, and they were like, why were you at this conference? This is not okay because you didn't ask for permission. It was like, what are we talking about? Like, I don't even use Facebook, right? So LinkedIn, I think, is professional, but I also find that I get a lot of requests to join them, and I don't know them. So why would I want to be facilitating something for them when I don't really know them? So I want to stay connected with the people that I connect with. So I really think it keeps coming back. Everything we've talked about today keeps coming back to boundaries. What are the boundaries that you have, and how do they relate to your values? Just a thought.
One of the pieces regarding that social media is work related wise. And when you build a friendship with people you work with, you can also rely on the company's social media policy. What are the rules and regulations that your employer has put into place regarding social media? Our social media program where rules and regulations are rather harsh. They're very strict, and I don't disagree with them. My face is out there in the public as a representative of Head Start. While my personal life may not align with my professional life, when I agreed to work with them and I knew what their rules and their boundaries were, and I signed the dotted line, I accepted that responsibility of following within that. If I did not want to stay there, if I didn't like that, I could go somewhere else. But I read through it. I said, okay, this is their expectation of me. I can sign it and work here, or I cannot sign it and not work here. So understanding that that could be something you could fall back on as a go-to with other people. Like, I'm sorry, but this doesn't align with what our social media protocol is for our company.
Yeah, thank you, Rebecca. And you are, I think, among the fortunate who works for an organization that is forward thinking and has set out those boundaries. And I also heard something else. We're talking about multiple hats. And thank you for sharing that you have your personal and then your professional. In addition to our multiple hats that you wear in your roles in your professional life, you also have a hat as a private human being, and we need to be. That's a boundary. Yes, Janet. Yes, boundary. I'm thinking. Brene Brown she's such a genius, and her braving boundary is the first. I mean, she could have thought of other words, right? But boundary is the first word. And so, yes, we have another hat, and we certainly have to be circumspect about that hat. And if we are fortunate, like Rebecca, and have an organization that supports us and understanding and more clearly defining, and if we don't, not a but, and if we don't, where should that conversation be with ourselves, with our supervisor, perhaps with a mentor? We need to have some clarity around that.
Yeah, in the next session, we'll explore boundaries a little further as well, because it is a complex issue, right? And I think because as you're sharing these thoughts, I'm also thinking because sometimes you might find out something accidentally on social media that you wished you didn't know about somebody you're coaching, right? You're like, no, TMI, right? I wished I didn't know that. Um, so yeah, it's a big question.
And just one more point about social media. There's also a cultural. So my son has worked as a teacher. He's in a private junior high school in Taipei, Taiwan for it's actually 17 years this month. And I will tell you, since he's been there for 17 years, I will tell you that parents and professional and teachers and leadership in his junior high and high school, it is a different culture and they think very differently about social media. Very differently. Very differently about sharing, very differently about, they just think differently. So again, it really is. Rebecca, you are really one of the lucky ones that has an organization that spells it out so clearly.
And I often say that, that I feel that I landed in this position and I was really lucky to be there because, as I stated, I may not agree with it, but I agreed to work here, so I need to follow that guideline.
Okay,
I
well,
keep muting myself. Lorraine, I think it's you, or maybe it's me.
we are nearing the end, so we put the feedback in chat, but we'd like to invite the panel or anyone to share any thoughts as we're coming to the end of our time together about this topic, how to balance those multiple roles or anything that's come up based on the conversation so far. Everybody's deep in thought.
I'm just wondering how many people are thinking about, let's get my boundaries in order.
I'm gonna go.
I use and how do I align that with my boundaries? Which is a really good question to not just consider once, but we change over time, right? We work for different organizations, as Rebecca was talking about. So really pondering that, and I think the next session there is a question on that you can have some discussion around.
Yeah, and listening to all of you and seeing your comments and chat, it's not easy. I can't recall who it was, and I thought, oh my goodness, we're being very vulnerable. I think it was Stephanie. Stephanie, I hope you wrote it in chat, so I hope it's okay. But Stephanie wrote, decide what you will and won't do as a coach. That is my own self-talk before I go into a site because it's so hard for me. I'm going to guess it's so hard for all of us. Stephanie, you are in great company here. And thank you for that vulnerability and saying that and acknowledging that. Lorene and I, as we were sort of talking this out before we brought our wonderful panelists in, we said that this is not easy. The multiple hats, which one are we wearing, identifying it for ourselves, ensuring that our coaching partner, whoever we're talking with, knows, and also checking in, as Sammy said so often, checking in. Do you actually believe that's who's talking right now? This is all hard. And Janet, thank you. Boundaries are hard, and we're not experts at it. We're never going to be experts at it. We're going to keep striving, and that's what we're going to do. So, Lorene, we're coming to the end, as you say. Yes, I hope some of you or all of you can join our next session, which is holding space, processing trust, boundaries, and complexities in coaching, words that we have already used in this session, and really delving more deeply into that. And Janet, thank you for sharing our feedback document link.
Did you see Alicia's statement in the chat? I thought that was pretty profound for the ending of our conversation. Boundaries make blurry lines clear.
Ah, I like that, Alicia. We might steal that from you.
I know, I was thinking as we're ending, wouldn't it be great if those multiple roles, somehow you can turn off a valve in your brain to like put all those thoughts like aside, like they leave your consciousness while you're in this role, then you flip that switch and right, you could just, but it's not that easy. Our brains are, right, always working.
And that's where the grace for ourselves and for others comes in. You know, because I'm going to guess as clear as we want to make those boundary lines, they're going to be blurry at times. And so we have to have grace for ourselves. Only extending it to ourselves are we able then to extend it to others.
Right. And Janet, I think you said it. Sometimes we have to redraw the line. It gets so blurry, maybe it disappears for a while, and then it's time to draw it in a big, bold Sharpie, right? No, well, again, sometimes it has, no, we might have to draw it again, right?
Well, I think sometimes it depends on the need, right? You see people in such dire straight needs that you want to then go, okay, normally I wouldn't fix it, but this needs some fixing, right? And all of a sudden you find yourself in the thick of it going, what did I just do? Like, stick to the boundaries, please.
Well, it's like with children, right? To individualize, to really be equitable in our approach, right? What do people need? And what are they ready to accept? Right?
Lorene, I'd like us to all thank again our brave panelists who stepped up for us, Rebecca and Sue and Sammy. Thank you so much. For all of the rest of you, and thank you for your participation and generosity and your comments and your thoughts and your feedback. Rebecca and Sue and Sammy did definitely step up for us. They met with us, and they were very generous in offering some of their own thoughts as we planned this session. So thank you, the three of you. And I think and thank you everyone. And I think we can close a few minutes early and enjoy your afternoon. I hope some of you are able to join the last session of today.